Hi everyone, Laura Mackey here. Today I wanted to go over a little bit about Lightroom's crop tool and also aspect ratio and composition. Basically, when I'm shooting a subject, I like to try to compose as best as I can in the camera. However, I don't like to get in too close because if I get in too close, I have no room to work with cropping in Lightroom because I may want to have a little bit better adjustment in my composition than I can do looking through my viewfinder or looking through the live view screen. So I always leave myself a little space, and you can see here there's a lot of space around here. This is not what I would consider a final composition. One of the problems with this composition is the horizon is right in the center, and that is actually a no-no. For those of you who haven't noticed, start looking at pictures and noticing where those horizons are. Most photographers don't put the horizon in the middle. Excuse me. There could be a situation where you would intentionally do that. However, you would intentionally do it knowing how to break the rule and when you're breaking that rule of not putting a horizon in the center. So I would get in the habit of looking at your photos even through your viewfinder and making sure that you decide what's more important in your photo. Is it the foreground or is it the sky? If you're doing a landscape, for instance. And in this case, it's in the center because I knew I was going to crop it, and cropping will change where that location of the horizon is anyway. So I wasn't too worried about it when I was looking through the viewfinder. But in this case, I would decide what is more important. To me, it's the foreground. I like this reflection, and once I edit this image, the subject is the Golden Gate, and I want to see this tower and then this reflection of the bridge. And I like how the reflection of the clouds kind of goes down here. It's kind of a nice leading line of this image. And then up here you've got the clouds. But there's really nothing up here, this negative space. It does nothing for the image at all. So I would crop it so that this horizon is a little higher so that we see more of the water than we do of the sky. So over here, you'll see this little square here with dots. That's your crop tool. And in the crop tool, if you click O and just keep scrolling and clicking, you'll see all the different crop options that Lightroom has to offer. But you only see one option of each diagram. For instance, this spiral, if I wanted to have the spiral in the lower left, the way I do that is I hit a shift. Let me get that off the screen. If I hit a shift and then click O and keep holding the shift key down and clicking O, you'll see the spiral will change shapes and move around. So once you find the one that you want, you can stop all the holding the shift down and clicking O and just stop and release, and then you can use that as your guide to crop your image. For this one, and actually, before I actually decide on which one of these to use, I will go over to this area over here where it says original, because this is where you're going to find your aspect ratio. Because if I just cropped this right now, I would be having to do something like this. Move that edge over. You can just drag any one of these handles and it will resize the crop, maintaining the same length and width. But you can move it around, and I could use this, for instance, as maybe something like that as my final composition, because I like the spiral right there where the tower is. That's my subject. If I hit close, I end up with that, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But you can also, let me go back, you can also go change your aspect ratio to a completely different size image. So I could pick 5:7, I could pick 2:3, but for this I always like 16:9. That's one of my favorites. I'm going to just expand this so we can see it the big size as much as possible. The reason I like that is because now I see everything from right to left. The only thing that's changed is the height or width of this image. And I like that expansive feeling from left to right in this case, so I'm going to choose that aspect ratio. And then I'm going to go ahead and resize this and make sure that that spiral is right there where the intersection of the tower to the horizontal part of the bridge is. That's probably a pretty good composition. Now, if I were to click the O key, I haven't clicked enter yet, so nothing has been accepted. But if I just clicked O and scrolled to the rule of thirds, for instance, this is your tic-tac-toe rule of thirds, you'll notice that normally you would try to put your subject right on the intersection of these two lines, in this case, since it's the upper right-hand area. But in order to do that, I would have to click and drag back. And I'm losing a lot of this area over here that I like. So I don't really like the rule of thirds for this. And I've sat here and I scrolled through using my O key, changing all the different crops to see which one worked best for this composition. And that one is the one that just naturally landed in the right spot with just a little tiny bit of adjustment here to resize it so that this is right on the tower. Remember when we talked about, and if you have gone with me to one of my composition outings, we talked about the Fibonacci rule, the golden ratio, and how this shape naturally occurs in nature. So our eye is used to seeing this shape and it's very pleasing to our eye. So that's why it's good to use these rules for cropping, because it's something our eye likes. So, you know, I can tell when things are slightly off, you know, they're not quite right. It just doesn't sit right. Something's off, and it's usually a crop. And you want to have a strong composition. So I encourage you to use this crop tool as a guide, and also the aspect ratio as a guide. Notice when I changed it to 16:9 that this horizon is no longer in the middle. The middle would be these two little handles from left to right. And if there was a line across, you would see that, you know, the horizon now is a lot higher. And I like the fact that now the water is taking up most of the space in the image, and then this part is smaller than the water. And let me hit enter by clicking close, and now you've got a pretty good strong composition to work with. And this is the first thing I always do with my images. I crop and decide on the aspect ratio, or you can do it the other way, decide on your aspect ratio and then crop. Sometimes it's just a little fiddling of both to figure out what works. And then I edit it. I don't do any editing before I make the crop, because it changes the look of the image if you do the crop. So you can go back here and see that's the original image out of the camera, and then I'll go back here, that's the crop. No, look how much stronger that is. You're tight in there, you're low to the water, looking over the water, out at the bridge. It just makes more sense, and that putting that spiral there really draws your eye right to that location. So anyway, I hope that helps you in editing your images and creating strong compositions. Thanks for watching.